You're listening to Making Data Simple, where we make the world of data effortless, relevant, and yes, even fun.
Welcome back to Making Data Simple. I appreciate your listenership, and as always, please provide any feedback you can on whatever forum you're listening to this podcast on. I am going to talk about Spark today, or Apache Spark. Maybe it should be Spark in action, and I'll tell you why in a bit. But to help me do that, I've got Jean-Georges Perrin. And I've known Jean-Georges for a long time. He's a fan of Informix Database, where I've been a fan of for a long time, and that's where, more or less, I started my career. But Jean-Georges is currently the Senior Architect, Director, and Executive Consultant at Veracity Solutions. I think they need to find yet another title for him. He's already got a ton of them. And he's formerly a Data and Software Architect. Before that, he was the Director of Cloud Software. He's done a lot of different roles. He describes himself as internationally recognized, or as an internationally recognized leader in design, development, launch, and expansion of multicultural startups and development teams. That's a mouthful. But Jean-Georges is, I guess in short, is an entrepreneur. We're going to talk to him about Spark. We're going to talk to him about a little bit of whatever comes up, whether it's data or whether it's just about Jean-Georges. So Jean-Georges, welcome. I know you're always up to something. I'm going to let you describe yourself, and this is how I'll start. I'll say this. Can you just not hold down a job, or are you always ahead of the time?
Hi, Al. Thank you for having me. Well, it's true that I had a lot of experiences, and I kind of love the dynamism of being a consultant. But recently, as far as yesterday, I actually am the director of engineering for a company called weexperience. So all that is over. I'm going to focus on just being a director of engineering for a wonderful startup here in Durham, North Carolina. So, see, things are changing as fast as that.
So this is a new venture that you're setting out on?
Yeah, I'm not starting it, but I think I miss the startup environment. I think I've been an entrepreneur since college, my first, well, probably even high school. So, yeah, I've done that a lot in France, and I think the climate in France was not fantastic for startups, but that's another podcast. But so I moved to the US about 3 years ago, and yeah, I've done consultancy most of the time, but I kind of missed really the startup spirit. So I'm really glad that I'm going to onboard this new this startup here. They just did their Series A, and I cannot say anything more, but it's going to be a fantastic adventure for sure.
Well, what's your role again in the new role?
Director of engineering. So all data, all software, all analytics, all that. And I want there's going to be a lot of AI. There's going to be a lot of experience of design thinking. A lot of things I've learned thanks to my to my love for IBM. So that's, yeah.
Nice. So you reside in the U.S. now, right?
I am, yeah. I moved to North Carolina, where the weather is actually rainy, but usually it's pretty good. And climate, the business climate is good too. So, yeah, I'm very close to IBM RTP here, which is a wonderful location, wonderful people there. Create a lot of friends around here.
Nice. So I get it that it's probably worthy of another podcast, probably in terms of a political climate. I'm still going to ask. On the France side, what inhibits startups? I mean, where's the frustration at, if you wouldn't mind saying?
Sure. Well, the labor laws in France are very protective of their people. That's a big difference with the U.S. I think it's a bit drastic in the U.S. in terms of unprotection or non-protection, but I think it's really going too far in France. And for example, the thing is, you want to protect your employees. Okay, you want them to be. I think it's not only good human behavior, but it's also good business behavior, good business practice to take care of your employees when you can. We're not in the 19th century Great Britain with workers in factories and mines. Okay, so things have changed. So, but the labor laws have basically not changed that much. There's a lot of public government employees that have not the same rules as private sector. When you hire people, it's really difficult to actually to get rid of them if you need to get rid of them. So a lot of companies go down because they cannot really get rid of the over employees in bad when the economy is bad, and on the other hand, when the economy is getting better, CEOs and companies are afraid to hire more because they've got this risk of the economy going back down. So it creates this kind of making things a little bit less dynamic than it is here in the U.S. And you're much more constrained to the public domain in France than you are in the U.S. I still have a lot of friends over there who are kind of waiting for a government decision or a local government decision to move to do something, even if it's for the good of the community. Where in the U.S., you kind of, my impression is you move first and then you ask questions later. So that's a bit of a difference. So. Yeah,
that makes sense. So it's very tough to really foster an incubation, a startup in France, where in the U.S. it's more conducive to do so. I got it. So let me ask you though, how do you describe yourself and what you do? Because I know you've done consulting. I know you've been in the data field. I know you've started businesses. I know you've also started pushing the envelope around data science. You're a little bit everywhere. I mean, how do you describe yourself and what you do?
I think I'm just a software engineer.
All right, that's simple enough. No. Elaborate on that just a little bit for me.
Okay. Well, the thing is, I'm giving quite a few talks, and actually I just gave we had a meetup on Spark at an IBM location here, and people wanted to know a bit, about the speakers, and I think, one thing I'm sure is I started doing software when I was 12. Okay, so that was back in 1983, and I started loving it. Okay, so the thing is, I don't even know if I'm good at it, but you need to understand things that are kind of connect to all this software thing. Okay, so you can't just I'm going to be very good at every languages. You've got to understand that in part of an ecosystem, and I think that's a bit of a transition to data, where what's the goal of software without data? And I think I was, sometimes you think about your past, and I think actually my first big data problem was back in 1984, because out of my Atari 800 XL, what I wanted to do is control the traffic light in the city where I was living. Okay, so that was really kind of IoT and collecting all this data. It didn't work. Okay, I didn't go further than just experimenting with the idea. But I think that's it. It's just being a software engineer, because I love engineering. I love designing things, and you've got to go before in the process, so that's where you look more at being an architect, and you go also after in the process. And well, you and me have experience with support. Okay, back in '97 when I started working for 4J's development tools, I started as a support engineer. So I think you've got to have this kind of 360 vision of software, but down. I'm just thinking I'm a software engineer.
So, but you're kind of a serial entrepreneur, right? I mean, you have several startups that you've been at least founder or co-founder of, yes?
Yeah, I did. My first startup where I was a co-founder was an internet service company back in '95 in France. We were the first service provider outside of Paris. So this company was called the Pandemonium Group. The joke was all the Unix demons, Pandemonium was there. That was kind of the nickname for the company. Yeah. And then in 2002, after I left 4J's, I created a company called Awoma, where my goal was to simplify software development and make sure that productivity of developers increased. Okay, so the idea is that was a bit like in the same scenario as what I was doing for 4J's, where developers are expensive. Let's work out how we can actually make developers more affordable and build frameworks, build tools that increase productivity. So that kind of that was kind of the value proposition of Awoma. Unfortunately, I think software engineers and business are not that good together, or at least, well, I'm not part of where you're good at business. So this was not a commercial success. And then after that, I created a company called Green Ivory. That was back in 2006. And the idea of Green Ivory was not really in development tools, but was more around considering the internet as a big, huge database where you can grab data and publish data. And we built quite a few tools for e-marketers. The idea was to have a complete portfolio of e-marketers. So that was 2006. That was, the internet was starting back in, popular like 93, 94 but in 2006, that was only 2 years after Google's IPO, to put things back in context. And in 2010, we were doing, it's funny because that all happened in France, where there's not a big delay, but there's still a delay from where, the naming and all the technologies of what you hear in the US when it hits actually the French shores. But I was doing big data. I didn't even know I was doing big data. I was doing AI. We were doing NLP a lot. We were doing NLP at scale. We were doing sentiment analysis back in 2010, 2011. So that was really super innovative and super interesting. The idea was to analyze the impact of brands and how brands were perceived on the internet. So yeah. And when Green Ivory finished in 2014, then I said, okay, no more. And here I'm back on a startup. You
had it, and then you're right back to where you started.
Well, it's like drug addicts. It's very difficult to quit.
It's in your DNA. I got it. So let's jump right in, because one of the things that brings you here is you've recently wrote a book, which is on the topic that I started out this podcast with, and that is Spark in Action. And let's just start at fundamentals. What compelled you to write the book?
I think we've got a common friend who you interviewed not too long ago, Rob Thomas, and I think he was responsible for that. So I started doing Spark and using Spark like in 2015, not really knowing what I was doing, not really completely understanding the whole picture of it. I did my first project delivered back in 2016, but it's really until I've seen Rob on stage where at World of Watson, where he described Spark as an analytics operating system. And that's where I think that kind of made a tilt in my mind. And at first, well, I was a bit doubtful, but I tried to dig a little bit more, trying to understand what Rob was trying to say there. And finally, I completely embraced the idea, and not seeing it being developed more, I said, okay, well, I've got to do something. So that was one of the motivation to write a book on Spark. And from this angle, Spark as an operating system. And there was two other main motivations. Was a lot of people assume that because Spark is written in Scala, you've got to write application in Scala. I don't have anything against Scala, but I don't have anything for Scala. And I think there's so many Java developers out there that you don't need to add the complexity of learning Scala on top to Java developers. So I think that's one of the angle of the book. And the third was that a lot of rumors out there saying, oh, Spark is an evolution of Hadoop, so you need to learn Hadoop and before you learn Spark. And to be honest, I've never been convinced by Hadoop. Even when I was doing big data, we used a hybrid solution based on Informix and Elasticsearch, and that was giving us crazy performance. So we didn't really need anything like Hadoop. But the evolution in terms of analytics, and especially analytics operating system like that, that was clearly Spark. So I kind of skipped the Hadoop part, and I still don't see why you would need to learn Hadoop before you go to Spark.
So I got a lot to dive down in here. First thing I'll say is I did like the cover of your book, which it's like a colonial man and a woman on front, and I can see the gleam in the gent's eye. So I presume that's a pun on the word Spark. It's very French. Nicely done. Very, very French line. All right, so I got some questions on the Spark, but hold on for just a second. So how does one go about writing a book? Let's just get that out of the way. I mean, how do you find time to do that? Is it something you like set time every weekend, set time every day, or just block out a ton of time and get it done with, get it started, get it done with, and finish it off? I mean, how do you go about writing it?
It's a crazy process. I told my editor several times that if I knew beforehand, I'm still not convinced I would do it. And this is going to be a huge piece. It's going to be something like it's 600 pages, 18 chapters. So it's pretty big. I started I signed my contract with Manning in 97 in October of 97. So to give you perspective on how much time it took. Mm-hmm. On where to find time, I started doing it on weekends, and I thought that would be enough, and it's not. And
ask.
Yeah, and the thing is also I have a family. Okay, so I care about them, so I kind of wanted to spend a lot of time with them as well. So I had to find something. So I get up every morning at 5:30. I'm starting my day by writing a couple of hours in the book, and hopefully I try to have a little bit in the evening, not too much, and on weekends as well. And so right now, I had my job. I'm starting my next job like next Monday. It's a full week where I can actually talk to you. I can also write a book like from 5:30 to 6 p.m. So that gives me time to crank things down a little bit.
So fantastic. That's good. So now I know. And by the way, that's not unlike most of the other authors that I've heard, where they start their morning first and they get up and start writing, because that's the best time to get something done, feel like you got something done, get a couple hours away, and then get back to your day. You said that, like you were listening to Spark with Rob Thomas when he was talking about Spark as the analytics operating system. You talked about it. Some people think it's an evolution of Hadoop. I agree with you. I think most people look at Spark and Hadoop. They go hand in hand. So why don't we just start with the simple questions? What is Spark? And I think there's even some people out there that think it's more of a fad and it's not here to stay. Obviously, you must be on the other side of that. So what is Spark, and why is it going to be around for a while?
So I answer the second question first. Well, data keep growing. my crazy idea of 1984 of controlling the traffic lights with an Atari 800 XL is probably not going to appear. But with the technology we have now and the power we have now, we need something that is going to grow in a pretty linear fashion. And that's so far my experience with Spark is it's growing, it's scaling very, very nicely. Its ability to handle in a smart way both data in memory and on disk makes it a pretty nice tool. It's also designed as a platform. So on some specific things, yeah, you've got better tools. Okay, like if you look at structured streaming within Spark or streaming within Spark, you will probably have better tools for just streaming. But the ability of offering a unique API for that, it makes Spark a tool to stay. I mean, that's what I deeply believe in. It's good fundamentals for a platform where you can extend it, where you can build your applications on. So I don't think it's going off the market anytime soon.
So when would I use it, and when would I not use it then?
So far, as long as it's data processing, you can use it anytime. Okay, it's a bit like, it's not going to be a transactional system, so it's not going to be to replace your point of sale system, and it's not going to be, this aggregation of data in Informix that Walmart, Home Depot is doing. Okay, that's not where Spark is doing that. But after that, that's really where the analytics takes place, is when you want to take your data and you want to start doing analytics with it, that's where it shines. But I've also used Spark a lot for data pipelines. One of the use cases I worked on was to have data on-prem and trying to create a very high velocity data pipeline from on-premise to the cloud. So the customer in this situation were kind of stuck with the SQL Server cluster they had on-prem, and they could not really make it evolve, or it was under a lot of production constraint all the time. But they keep wanting people to leverage the data in SQL Server for all kind of analytics or all kind of application and expose all this data. And so we actually managed to implement a very nice way to extract the data from SQL Server, leveraging change data capture, CDC, and bringing all the data into the target was Elasticsearch, but leveraging all this pipelining through Spark. And one of the prerequisite of the solution was to be able to maintain several versions of schemas. So it means that if there was a change in SQL Server, we would not impact down the road the schema of the document in Elasticsearch for 3 versions.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, that's good. So let me wrap this up from a book perspective. I mean, all good information on Spark, and I think there are many folks that will be interested in hearing this. So what will I take away from the book? What will the audience take away from the book? Well,
you will be, at the end of the book, you will be definitely a proficient Spark developer, a Spark application engineer, a better data engineer. It's not, it's when you write a book, it's very difficult to stay completely on focus all the time. So that's why I've got an editor. She's doing a great job of torturing me, so I also let go as much as I could all the kind of nuggets I gathered for 25 years. Okay, so how do you integrate better libraries that works with Spark? How do you leverage your code? What's the best practice for doing that? So this is all the kind of stuff that I also used in the book.
I think the audience is going to get a ton of value from. So look, thank you for being on. I do got a couple quick questions for you to wrap up. Just about you. We first met as part of the IIUG, which is the International Informix User Group Board. You've been an IBM champion for many years. I wanted to ask you from your perspective. Maybe I shouldn't in front of an audience here, but what does the IBM champion mean to you, and what doors has it opened for you?
IBM is probably the company I have most respect for. It's been consistent as a company as ever as I knew it, and I looked at its history over time. I really, I came through a little door to the IBM world when IBM decided to acquire Informix. At that time, I was doing a lot of work with Informix, but I saw that as a wonderful opportunity. I often use a line that, a few years before the acquisition of Informix, IBM acquired Lotus and kept the Lotus brand for very long, and I was just kind of daydreaming that IBM would keep Informix as a data brand, but this did not really happen this way, unfortunately. But the thing is, I admire IBM's consistency in research, in product development, in the way it follows business. PC are not going to make any more money, so we are not able to compete with Compaq or anything. So let's put that away. And I think even if people can be bitter about some of this move as a businessman, I think it was really a smart move. And all that, it's not about only the PC. That was just an example, but the consistency about what IBM is constantly innovating, is constantly exploring new ways.
So last question that I'll ask you, and then I'll give you your time back. You're a busy guy. Because you're a busy guy, here's the question: what does a French guy in the U.S. do for fun?
Well, I think I adopted a bit of the American lifestyle. I love the outdoors, even if my shape doesn't look like it. We recently bought an Airstream, and we love going out on weekends. We take the truck, and we take the Airstream, and we just go. Well, we cannot go all over the country yet, but we go to Virginia, which is that close. We go to the mountains. I love Asheville and the mountains here. We go to the coast. So yeah, I love doing that. It gives me such a bowl of fresh air that it's great. It's also probably because I don't shower for a weekend. That's probably my French aspect of not watching.
That's very French-like, but I think other than that, you're very, very much Americanized. All right, brother. Hey, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you.
We appreciate you gave us a lot of information on Spark. We'll put the information and your contact information as well as where to get the book in the show notes, and hopefully you'll see a lot of uptake with all the listeners going out there, and
I'd love it.
So, all right, hey, thank you so much, JGP, and I'll talk to you next time.
Sure. Thanks, Al. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Making Data Simple podcast, where we make data fun. Be sure to visit IBMBigDataHub.com/podcast to access the show notes and uncover even more great episodes. Remember, the views expressed here are those of the host and its guests, and do not necessarily represent the views of IBM. Until next time, Over and out.